Hello everyone, my name is Leslie Oman and welcome to another Hungry Healthy Crafts video tutorial. Today I'm making a card. It's going to be a sympathy card and it's going to feature quite a bit of stamping. I'm starting by using my distress inks and the blending tool and building up some colour to create a background for my card. I'm using mostly brown muted tones, but adding a little bit of blue just so that there's a little hint of colour in there. Once I've got a nice muted background, I'm using this friend definition stamp by Hero Arts, and I'm going to stamp this image onto the background just very lightly using one of these colours which I've already used, and that'll just give a lovely soft pattern on to the back of this paper so I can use as a background. So let's use this ink pad, and I'm just tapping the ink onto the stamp, and then I'll press the card on top of the stamp because this stamp is quite big, so it's easier to stamp this way around. So I use my fingers to walk around the outside of the card to make sure we've got an even coverage all the way around. Now my stamp's a little bit smaller than the cardstock, but that's fine, we'll trim that off. I'm using my Cuttlebug now, and I'm also using some Nestability dies from Spellbinders. It's one of the label dies. So I'm going to run it through my Cuttlebug and cut out that shape from the background like this. So once again, working on my non-stick craft mat, I'm going to take some more ink, and whilst the die is still in place, I'm going to dab just a little bit of colour all around the outside, bring some more colour in, and that creates a shadow effect. You can almost see it there, it's on the card. Next step is my stamp, and I'm using a flower stamp. It's a penny back stamp, and I've picked out a few colours of pigment markers. So I've got a green colour here, so I'm just drawing onto the stalks and stems of these flowers, and I've actually done the rest of the stamp with the other colours that I had. Because it takes a few minutes to do that, I'm spraying the stamp with a fine layer of mist, just plain water, and that'll refresh the ink on this stamp. And let's stamp this onto our cutout. There we go. So I'm using a baby wipe now to clean the ink off my stamp, and I really like that big flower, but there's only one of them on the stamp design. So I'm going to take my pigment marker again and just draw over that one flower on my stamp. And this is a great way to pick and choose which part of a stamp you want to make an image of, which part to stamp. And if there's parts that you don't want to stamp, you can just not bother colouring over them. So now I have my die cut. I'm actually going to use this excess background as well. I don't want to waste it. So I've trimmed it so that it's a little bit straighter, and I'm going to mount it on a card blank. But first of all, I want to add a little bit more colour. So I've taken this scratch piece of purple cardstock, and I'm just going to cut it slightly longer than the die image. So this is going to act as a background. So I line up the die cut piece of paper and find exactly where that rectangle needs to go so that you can see the purple through the aperture. So I've stuck the front on now. I'm going to trim off the edge of the card using a metal rule and a craft knife. Let's get rid of that excess bit there, and then we'll move over on to the next part of our card. I'm taking a square punch, and I'm just taking the corner of it and using it to create a little flag design on the excess piece of the purple cardstock. I'm just going to trim it down here, and this is going to be for my card. And because it's a scratch piece of paper, I don't have any more of the same colour, so I've cut it in two, and I'm sticking this small piece up at the top here and line it up carefully, and then the other flag design part will go on the bottom, but because I want to make sure it's completely straight, I'm using my T ruler for this. So this will go like this, but first I want a greeting on the top here. So let's grab my stamps. I'm using this Heartfelt Wishes stamp from a set of stamps by Personal Impressions. I'm just going to make sure that it's straight by using the grids on my mat as a guideline. I'm stamping it in black soot, any black ink pad would do, and just using a little scratch piece of cardstock to test it a couple of times. This is the first time I've actually used this stamp, so what I like to do is just to test it a few times before I actually go ahead and stamp it onto my image. So I'm getting a good impression with it. Let's take the plunge. There we go. Gently just press that down. Perfect. So now I'll stick this on top, and I'm using the foam pads to give a little bit of dimension. And what that means is whenever you look at the card from a bit of an angle, you can see the purple come through, but we don't want it to be raised up so much that you can see that purple flag part is not one single piece. Unfortunately, I just didn't have enough of that purple cardstock left. So to add some finishing touches, let's stick on some adhesive pearls into the middle of the flowers, and I've got some smaller ones here for the little tiny flowers as well. And to completely finish it off, I'm using my corner chomper to round off the corners of the card to give it a softer feel. So that's the completed card. Thanks for watching the video, and be sure to jump over to hungryhealthycrafts.com for more inspiration.